morning, church? Awesome. Let's stand on our feet and praise the Lord this morning.
Nobody but Jesus, who pulled me out of that pit. He did, who paid for all of our sin. Nobody but Jesus, who rescued me from that grave. Yahweh, Yahweh, who gets the glory and praise. Nobody but Jesus, who rescued me from that grave. Yahweh, Yahweh, who gets the glory and praise. Nobody but Him. This is our God. This is what He does. He loves us. This is our God. This is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus.
Amen. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I build my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Christ is my firm foundation. Christ is my firm foundation. The rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. Sing it out. He won't fail. He won't fail. Rain came, wind blew. My house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm gonna make it through. Rain came, wind blew. My house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm gonna make it through. Sing it one more time. Rain came, wind blew. My house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm gonna make it through. Yeah, I'm gonna make it through. I'm standing strong on you. I'm gonna make it through. My house was built on you. Christ is my firm foundation. The rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he when darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know. Oh, I won't be shaken. Oh, I won't be shaken. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. When shame no longer has a place to hide, and I am not captive to the lies, I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Oh, I won't be shaken. Oh, I won't be shaken. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. One more time, sing it out. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. Oh, there's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Thank you, God. Thank you for just allowing us to stand in your love. And I just pray that we really don't have fear when we stand in your love. I just pray as we go into announcements and into your message, Lord, that we just are free from any distractions, Lord, and just keep our eyes and our ears on you, Lord. In your name, amen.
Good morning. Welcome to the Well. Man, I don't think we can not state the obvious and say how cool it is to have young leaders stepping on stage. And the coolest part is the story behind that is I know not a lot of great stuff came out of COVID, but going through COVID with our youth group and letting our church letting us kind of care for students the way that we could during that time, and bringing Caleb in just as an intern when his life drastically changed. And then God used Caleb here as like a local missionary for a little while, and then he sends him on. And what he started, Nicole and Julie, our brother and sister, and they joined our church at the end of COVID, at the end of that year, and went to camp with us. And just what God was doing during that time, absolutely amazing, and the talents that these students have. And you know, Luke married my daughter, so he stuck with us for a while. So, but can we just be real? And this church is different. So if you're new to the Well, welcome. We just say thank you for coming and checking us out. But this church is, we're not better than anyone. We're not a better church, but I think we are very good at letting people step into places where God's calling them to. And it takes a lot of change and weirdness sometimes, and thank you for that. I mean, we get to see this stuff happening right in front of our eyes, man. It's a huge blessing. One of the coolest parts, other than watching stuff on the stage that happens at the Well, is our Gap ministry, is our food pantry, and that compassion care. Yeah, man. We could cheer for that every single week, and I know that there's some people in the courtyard. There's a raffle getting ready to go on this Friday. There's a spaghetti dinner, a drive-through spaghetti dinner on the 4th. So if you like food, or if you don't like food, here's what I encourage you to do. Buy a couple of plates and just give the tickets away, or take the food and throw it in the trash if you don't like spaghetti. Right? Just send the money to Gap. That's all we're hoping for. No, but the food will be really, really good. I'm not super picky about food, but I'm going to be getting spaghetti on the 4th. That's the truth. So, but very, very good food. And always, anytime that you can get value for what you're putting your money into, right? I want to give to this, and then you see results, right? Absolutely amazing as to what's happening there. Next Steps Luncheon. If you are newer to the Well, you're visiting, you've been around me. This is what's been cool. We've had baptism, so we've had guests come in, and sometimes people stick around for a week or two to see what's going on at the church. This morning, there's family and friends coming to watch some of the students play music. And so just whatever it is, if you're going like, maybe this is a church, right? If you're from another church, you need to go talk to that church before you leave. Let's be real. But if you're new here and you want to find out what's happening at the Well and how we are different and some of the different ministries and the way that we care for people in Modesto, on the 13th, we'll be in the back room, free food. We'll hang out, and you'll get to hear from Pastor JC, who's our interim leader right now, and just be able to see what the vision and what the Well's doing in the times and everything that's going on, and then maybe somewhere you could serve if you're feeling called to that. And then the last announcement I have is for the Empire Pool Party. Everything's about food right now. I don't know what's going on, man. Like, I think I ate more pounds of food this last week at camp than I've ever eaten in my life. It wasn't that good of food. It was okay. It was all right. But we're having a pool party. If you like to cook, if you want to bring some stuff, it would be great as a potluck. You don't have to swim. Just come enjoy hanging out with the church and being a part of what happened through VBS the last couple of weeks, our Splish Splash Soccer Summer Blast. It's kind of the party, the celebration of that. So there'll be a ton of kids getting to enjoy the pool, and us adults get to too. So just the last thing I have is camp was this last week, and it was, we were trying to explain it this morning, and it was weird, and it was good, and it was hard, and every day just different stuff was going on. But here's the most amazing thing. 6 of our students accepted Christ for the very first time. Yeah. We only took 19 students. So absolutely amazing. Some of these younger kids, some of these kids who've never truly accepted for the first time. And it wasn't just a close your eyes, raise your hand. It was if you're ready, stand in front of 430 kids. And it was a super emotional, a bold time. But then on top of that, we had 8 students say, I'm not where I should be with Christ. Right? And when you go to camp, you feel that. You feel like you're not connected. But so we have these students now who many of them are going, I want to spend more time at the church. And I told them, you're not going to fix things just being at church. But what are we going to do with the time you want to spend here? So be praying for that. Be praying as God opens those doors. And as I get ready to pray for this service, I'm gonna ask Pastor JC to come up, and he's going to give us a great message. I love spiritual disciplines. I love talking about them, and this was his whole idea to go through this series. So we can always use this refresher often. So thanks for that. And as he comes up, let's pray together. God, there are so many things in this church, man, and the emotions just they run. For me, they run high when I see the effects of your Spirit moving, not just in students, but moving. And it would be hard to look around this room and not see you moving. And I know that you're growing students. I know that you're growing families. I know that you're bringing people into relationship with you. And I know that you're using this church to launch that, God. And we thank you so much for being a part. We just pray for JC as he gives this message to let it soak into us. Let us hear how we can grow in maturity in our spiritual journey, how we can grow closer to you. God, I thank you for everything that we get to do here as a part of the well. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yes, amen, and thank you, Pastor Kevin. You know, I was 17 when I met Jesus, and so what's really interesting, and I always talk about our lives, right, is that you see as you get older, our lives are like Play-Doh. When you're real young, fresh out of the box, you can be molded, and it's pretty easy. And as we get older and older, you ever found Play-Doh that your kids left out 3 years ago? You can't move it. It's an act of God, right? So I think, churches to pour into young people is just, you can change a whole generation, and they're open to having lives completely transformed that way. And in a way that maybe takes a more unique miracle as we get older, as you have a mortgage and as you have other things, and so to pour into children, into youth is so powerful. If there hadn't been a youth pastor in Oakdale by the name of Pastor Steve, would I even be here? But we don't know. God works. Not saying that God doesn't work that way, but it is powerful. And I'm excited. I haven't been speaking to you guys in a couple weeks. So as Kevin said, my name is JC. I'm the interim senior pastor. So I'm excited to be with you guys today. I love the single service. So hopefully you guys are loving the single service. It's a little difficult because I don't get the practice run of first service to, nail it for you second service people. So apologize for you guys, but I am loving it. I loved having everybody here. And how's your guys' summer been? Good, hot? Yeah, the pistachios are growing, so thanks for asking. I go out, I try to hug 10 trees a day, Just got to show them that you love them, right? And then I try to kill 5 bugs a day. So things are going good. And we are, Kevin started last week. We're going to go through a series of spiritual disciplines. And I don't know when you guys hear that, but I don't like discipline, right? You feel either as an authority coming down, disciplining you, or you feel like, I got to be disciplined to do something, and what are spiritual disciplines? What does that even mean? What does it mean to have spiritual disciplines? And if you're newer to the faith, you're like, okay, JC, give me a list, give me a to-do, I will check off all the items on the list, and then I'll be disciplined. And the thing is, it doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't, For spiritual disciplines, there's no biblical list. We're not talking like 10 commandments here. There's no list where there's some exhaustive spiritual disciplines list that Jesus talked about on the Sermon on the Mount. As he said, love your neighbor, also do 10 of these things every day. He didn't say that. And so I always wonder, okay, well, if we're not finding this from Scripture, where do we get these things from? So I want to take us all on a little bit of a history lesson. So imagine that Jesus has just been crucified and he's risen 3 days, and maybe we're not the disciples, but we're the early church. And as you're the early church for the first 3 centuries, your life is always under attack. See, one of the things is the church found themselves in the Empire of Rome. Rome wanted to extinguish the church. Because to say that Jesus is Lord is to say that Caesar is not. It's an act of treason. And so there's stories all the time of creative ways Rome was trying to torture and murder Christians to get them to recant saying Jesus is Lord. And so as this group of passionate people were trying to be squashed wherever they popped up, it was like as they got stomped, they just spread. In fact, the old church father Tertullian said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. So Rodney Stark, in his book, Rise of Christianity, by the end of the 2nd century, there was a church in every major city in Rome. Because as this passionate people were trying to be stomped harder and harder and harder, they spread more passionately and more passionately. And I can imagine, as an early church person, when we're meeting, we can't meet in a building. We have to meet in homes. So there's 10 of us, there's 20 of us, right? And every knock on the door, we don't know. Is it the Praetorian Guard? There's that passion, and I can imagine every day they had to cling so tightly to Jesus because it was Jesus or death. And as Christianity is in its infancy, people are just trying to stay alive. They're getting baptized, knowing after their baptisms they're going to their martyrdom. There's stories of these amazing Christian martyrs who are singing hymns as they're being burned at the stake. And this passion, they didn't really think much or write much about discipleship. They didn't think much or write much about spiritual growth. They had to just keep living. But then something happened. There was a change. As Christianity grew, and as it grew, right, there was this emperor, Constantine. And he was there was a contentious of who was the rightful emperor of Rome. And in 330, I think, plus or minus a few years, not a history major, he saw this. I think we have a picture up. Constantine had an army at the Milvian Bridge, and his army was all pagans. And he said, I'm not questioning what he saw, but he said he saw the Chi Rho. So that's the Catholic symbol of the P and the X, the Chi Rho. It was an early symbol for Christ. He said he saw in the night the Chi Rho in the sky. And so the next morning he ordered all of his soldiers to paint the Chi Rho on their shields as they went across the bridge and to invade the city of Rome. And guess what? They won. And now Christianity went from this religion that was on the side to being the state-sanctioned religion. We went from being outcast to being the center. Right? And Constantine, even though he wasn't baptized until his deathbed, started to make Christianity, first off, he legalized it, then he Hellenized it. And if you don't know what Hellenization means, bringing some type of pagan influences into the church. For example, even our sanctuary here, this is the shape of the old pagan temples. The old pagan temples were transferred to churches, and the statues of Jupiter were then statues of Paul. Right? So before the 4th century, you can hardly find any church building. They were houses because it was illegal. Now all of a sudden, Christianity is the state-sanctioned religion. And I'm not saying Constantine did all bad things. He did great things. Constantine's one of the reasons we have tax exemption for charitable giving. He instituted that. It's one of the things he instituted. Well, all of a sudden now we have millions of baptisms across the Empire of Rome. And now to be Christian also meant to be willing to be put yourself to death. Now there's this thing of like lukewarm Christianity. That maybe Christianity is acceptable, but you can go about your life. And as you have millions more of baptisms and believers and people coming, there's a hierarchy that starts to be developed. And now Christians aren't worried about dying and not worried about, just living the next day or having their small church where they can grow in community. Now there's, church buildings and there's all this different stuff. All of a sudden, some members of the faith started to feel discontent, like, is this what Jesus meant for us to do? And so what they did was they left. And in the 4th century, we see this, it's called the first monastic movement. We see these ascetics, these people move out into the deserts to try to cling deeply to Jesus. And they're the first monks in the first monasteries. And what these people did was they said, what does it mean in this new world to find a deeper and deeper relationship with Christ? And so they studied things like prayer and praying 12, 13 hours a day. They studied things like silence, being silent for years and years and years, singing, solitude. They started to put forth what we call now the spiritual disciplines of what does it mean in our life, in a life that we have where, we're not worried about being killed every day for Christ. What does it mean to continue to grow deeper? And as Christianity moved from its infancy to this adolescence, it was this maturity that we find ourselves in of how do we, as Christians, how do we grow? How do we grow? What are the steps? And so these monks spent centuries and centuries, and they're still out there, guys. They're still out there doing it, finding these disciplines to hear the voice of the Lord in the current culture, to cling tightly to Jesus like the early church did. Read some of the accounts of the early church. It's wild stuff. And these monks retreated from society to find that out. And what they brought us back, for all of us non-monks, unless there's some monks in here, I'm not aware, for us non-monks are these spiritual disciplines. And there's not an exhaustive list. It's not some type of thing that I can tell you. What it is, it should be a growing part of our lives. It's not found in Scripture, but what is found in Scripture is to seek after the Lord, is to try to find Him. Paul tells us to work out our salvation, right? And so that's what we're supposed to do. And in doing that, these amazing Christian fathers and sisters or mothers have laid the groundwork to say, here's the path that you can take forward. And there are moments where we can remove ourselves to find Jesus. Because here's the truth. In our lives, you can be a follower of Jesus and have months, days, years where you don't really feel Him. And you haven't really grown. And you haven't dug deeper. And your spiritual walk can just kind of level out. I'm not saying you're not saved. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I know Christ and I believe in Christ, not for some heaven ticket some odd days or years in the future, right? I need Christ today. Because the times that I feel the Holy Spirit right now are the times I feel peace and love and security. I would still be where I'm at even if there wasn't a promise of eternity because of the fullness I have in my heart now. And then I'm excited about eternity. So we can go through our whole lives and your life can look very similar to someone who doesn't believe. And these disciplines are to remind us every day that we're loved, to serve, to dig deeper, to see how we can build the kingdom out into our world. And that's discipline. And that's what these spiritual disciplines are. And we develop, and we should be focusing on develop this life of disciplines. And today, we're going to be talking about silence and solitude. So I figured we have about 25 minutes left. We'll just all be silent. Because if you're not going to do it on your own, I'll force you to do it here. Just kidding. I told at our prayer in this morning, I told them, I said, I think I'll just go up there and be silent and show them how it's done. And I think Julie thought I was actually serious. But no, today we're going to be learning about silence and solitude. And this is the easiest and absolute hardest spiritual discipline. Because our lives are full of noise. And we have Psalm 46, which I think is one of our slides. Psalm 46, the Lord says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God. How hard is solitude in silence for us. For all the chatter that's going on. To hear God's voice, to hear God's whisper, how hard is it for us to be silent? To give in our day and age, to let the Holy Spirit speak to us, how hard is it to remove ourselves from the noise? What I've always wondered in life is the next calm season in my life has always been the next one. Have you guys ever found that? I feel like I'm in a busy time, but next year will be calm. Is next year ever calm? No. Is it always more busy? Right? For me, it was, okay, we have these infants, and infants are really busy. Once they can talk and walk on their own, it'll be more calm. I know. I am not a smart man. I did not think through those statements correctly. Are walking, talking people less noisy? Absolutely not. I don't know how many questions I've answered in the last 4 or 5 years. And then I think, okay, well, right now, they can't do everything on their own. The next season will be calm, right? When they can go to a friend's house and they can do this, and then I'll feel, once they can drive, at least I don't have to be a chauffeur half the time, and then but I realize that that's all just lies I tell myself. It's just all lies I tell myself. That life is going to keep getting busier, and it's just going to keep getting noisier. And the distractions are going to keep coming. But I wonder, is noise of heaven or of hell? I don't know if you guys have read, or you could tell by the 8 months we've had together, C.S. Lewis has had a profound impact on my life as a writer. And one of my favorite books by C.S. Lewis is The Screwtape Letters. And if you're not familiar with the Screwtape Letters, I highly recommend it. But what it is, it's one-sided letters of Wormwood and Screwtape. And Wormwood is this junior type of devil or demon trying to seduce this young man, trying to influence him to the side of evil. And Wormwood writes letters to Screwtape, like a more lieutenant type, higher up demon. And we don't have those letters, but we have Screwtape's letters back to the younger demon about how to seduce this young man, about how to pull him to the dark side. It's masterful writing. But one of the things he says is this, and I think we have the quote up here from C.S. Lewis. I'll read it for you if you can. This is from Screwtape to the younger demon. Music and silence, how I detest them both. Hell has been occupied by noise. Noise, the grand dynamism, the audible expression of all that is exultant, ruthless, and virile. Noise which alone defends us from the silly qualms, despairing scruples, and impossible desires. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. The melodies, speaking's hard, the melodies and silence of heaven will be shouted down in the end. I love that because the Lord uses music to get us closer to Him and silence to get us closer to Him, but it's noise that distracts us. And it's all the noise. So my question is, do you have noise in your life? When is the last time you sat personally and did nothing for 10 minutes? Just sat. When was the last time? About 8 to 10 years ago, I read, and this whole series is based on Dallas Willard, who's another phenomenal writer, book, and I highly recommend that book too, called The Spirit of the Disciplines. And Dallas Willard, as he writes The Spirit of the Disciplines, I read it. And I was impacted because at that time, the only spiritual discipline in that book that I hadn't been trying to practice was silence and solitude. And I got convicted by Dallas Willard to all right, JC, you need to practice silence and solitude because, believe it or not, I kind of have a lot of energy. And I'm kind of fidgety. And I kind of go at 100 miles an hour. And so I was convicted, be still. So I was like, all right, Jesus, you want to do this? I'm game, let's try it. So I remember, all right, I'm going to do 10 minutes. That's all I can give you right now, Lord. So I sat down on my couch, took a deep breath, I was like, here we go. I kid you not, I set my timer. You only got 10 minutes. Do something, Jesus. Right? I set my timer. 90 seconds in, I was like, it had to be 10 minutes. Right? Had to be. It's only been 90 seconds. Oh gosh, we're in for a spiritual battle here. And then I remember I fell asleep. And I woke up and the Lord spoke to me, not audibly, but how tired is my spirit? That the first time that I try to do nothing, my soul is exhausted. Did I just fall asleep? My body wasn't tired, it was the morning, but my soul. So I did it again. And I told myself I wasn't going to feel guilty about falling asleep. If my soul needed rest, it needed rest. But I'm going to try it again. And the next day, fell asleep. By the third day, congratulations, I made it. And after a week, 1 week, 10 minutes, I felt the Lord start to flood me with emotions. And not that I saw any vision, I haven't seen any vision or anything miraculous like that, but I could feel the universe keep going, and I was still. And it was God saying, do you see this, JC? I'm in control of the universe, and it can move on without you. But what you can't do is, you're my son. And I love you for that reason only. Not for anything that you do for anybody else, or not how good you think you are, but you have value on who you are. So sit, my son, and feel the value. And I would sit, and I would feel the love of God just fill me up. And there's no prayer. I'm not saying I was praying. I wasn't reading. It was just feeling the presence of God tell me that it was okay to do nothing. And it was amazing the outlet that happened in my life. Because see, like I said, I'm pretty fidgety, I have a lot of high energy, and I felt a calmness through the rest of the day. That things would happen to me that would normally get me agitated. I was calm. Someone cut me off on the freeway, like, that's okay, you gotta go. Something's happening. And typically my thoughts are often scattered. They would follow more in a line. I could focus for longer periods of time throughout the day better. I was seeing God, having more patience with my wife, with my friends. All of a sudden, all of these things, I had a calmness about my spirit. And so I would do that for a long time. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of had grown out of that discipline, not grown out. I had, life gets busy. There's noise. I stopped practicing it as much. And I remember I was at the grocery store, and obviously I was at the grocery store and I had 2 toddlers with me, and that was frustrating. And I was late to wherever I was going, and that was frustrating. And guess how many people were in the line? Just 5 too many. And the Lord was testing my patience. He was testing my patience. And it's one of those moments, and this is just me. Maybe this is confession, but I was sitting there, and you have the 3 lines, and what do? You scout, right? You're like, okay, that checker is going slow. That person looks like they got coupons. This one, I don't know. And then you make, and especially when you're late, right? So like me, I was late. So I'm A, B, C, boom. And I go to C, and I'm sitting there. Come on. I'm late, and then the kids, they touch every piece of candy. That's why they put it down low. Right there for the kids. I never get that candy when I actually get candy. How many people have touched that candy? At least my kids twice. So anyway, I'm sitting there and just all of a sudden the anxiety is building up inside of me, and and all of it, I realized I haven't practiced solitude in so long that I was anxious about a register. The universe has gone on for some however many thousands, billions of years, and I'm nervous at this checker. And I'm losing my cool over this person. I realize That is what solitude and silence and stillness does for me. It makes me more like Christ. What did Jesus do all the time? He goes off to be alone. He is the Lord, and he needed time away. How much more time do I need away? He spent 40 days to prepare for his ministry, and I struggle with 10 minutes. And he goes. He went out. We have a quote from Oswald Chambers. It's the next slide, who is this theologian. And he says this: solitude with God repairs the damage done by the fret and noise and clamor of the world. When you sit in silence, when you sit in solitude, it's like your jigsaw puzzles apart and God just starts putting the pieces back together. Right? He starts putting them back together. Of all the spiritual disciplines, I think this one is the hardest for us. Because I believe this one is the one that has most changed in the last 100 years. Think about it. 100 years ago, most people were literate. Most people could get a Bible. Right? Most people knew how to pray. Most people fasted. But what do we have so different now than we did 100 years ago? You're never alone. Someone texted just right now. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. That's some real work of the Spirit right there. Let's just tell you. Right? You are never alone. Look at this thing. Remember 20, 25 years ago, you called someone, they didn't answer, and you didn't think that they were dying? You just thought that they had a life? I remember now, I am a grown man who hasn't lived at home since 18. I missed a phone call from my mother. God bless her soul the other day. She's like, I just want to see if you're okay. I'm fine, Mom. You ever driving down the road and you forgot your phone and you almost have a heart attack? And then you're planning out your whole day. You got to go back. You ever been in the car with a teenager who forgot their phone and they had an actual heart attack? We're glued. We're never alone. We're glued to these things, right? And these things, they are designed by the world's smartest people to keep us glued to them. And now we have anxiety. Ever get that phantom vibration? Right? The phantom, you're like, oh, is that a text message? Oh, no. Okay. Or now, look at this. Even this is too far away from me to be connected. So now I have to get them on here. Now I have to know. If someone texts me, this is too long. Now, okay. And now I can ignore your call from my wrist. We're glued to these. You are never alone. You're never, and these are designed by the world's smartest people to keep us engaged, and they are good at what they do. They are good. And we're glued to the things that come out of them. This silly little watch. Here's a perfect example. This is some off-brand iPhone watch, because I'm too reckless to actually have a good watch. So this is it's called an Amazfit. I kid you not. And so it's so good at keeping me glued to it. It has this thing that for 30 some odd years of my life, I had never heard of a personal activity indicator, a PAI. And it takes my steps and my workouts and all this stuff and gives me a score for the week. I had spent so much of my life not caring about this number. And now, twice a day, I have to check it to see where my activity. I spent so much of my life not knowing my heartbeat, but now I go to see if I'm dying. Or, before even COVID, I didn't know what specific oxygen was, but now, 98%, let me take some deep breaths. And I'm nervous. I have a higher heart rate trying to check to see if I have a lower heart rate. And it tells me, you seem stressed. Yeah. I am. And that's not even including all the social media things, right? Facebook, Snapchat, Be Real, Instagram, TikTok. These are all things. They are billion-dollar companies who have one goal, your attention. To get your attention, to see what you like, to sell you stuff. These things, I don't care what snazzy CEO says, they are not there so you can connect with your high school friends. That is not why they exist. They exist to sell you. You are the product, not the customer. You're the product. They know what you like, they know what videos you watch, and they want to keep you on there so on that ad you hit buy. The advertisers are the customers. The people that buy the ads for those companies to exist. Why do you think they're free? They're not free so you can connect with Regina from 20 years ago. No, they're free so they can sell you. They sell your data. Hey, Mr. Advertiser, here's a middle-aged male who likes, old cars. Do you want to advertise to him? Oh, yeah. They sell you. And they want you more and more and more. In fact, we're going to do this right now. Their goal is to keep you glued on here. So everyone, grab your phone. It's okay. It's okay. And we're going to throw them. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so first off, grab your phone. And if you have an Android, who are my Android people? Okay. I want you to open up Notes. We're going to just walk with me. It's okay. Open up Notes. Set a reminder. Buy an iPhone. That's the reminder. Okay. I kid. I don't know how to do it on an Android because I have an iPhone. But if you have an iPhone, I'm sure there's a way to do this. On the iPhone, see? You got your iPhone. Go to Settings. Go to your Settings. All right, you're on your Settings. About the 8th one down, under Focus, you'll see Screen Time. Hit Screen Time. Oh, why the grunts? Now, if yours is like mine, it should see this week started new. So on the top, you'll see a new thing. Flip it back one. You can see all activity and flip it back to last week. So hit on activity, see all activity, and go to last week's. How many hours a day? How many hours? Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, but JC, I use this for my work. I am an efficient business person. I use this for my work. Okay, fair enough. Underneath there, you'll see your most used apps. Are they work apps? Maybe. But last time I checked Facebook, not a lot of work happens on there. Or Instagram. But you'll see how many hours last week you spent on those things. The average, if you're an average, 3 hours and 11 minutes. That's the average, 3 hours and 11 minutes a day. A day on your phone. I'm here to start an intervention. You're addicted. Sorry I have to bring you all together to tell you this. You're addicted. We're addicted. Why? Because all of the flashy things hit the dopamine receptors in our brain, the feel-good chemicals in our brains. They do. And then we go through, we get these little shots of oh, what is that person doing? Oh, what is that person? Oh, look at this. Oh, look at it. And we just get these hits to keep scrolling. And then we get kind of immune to it. And then we go away. But the app doesn't want us to go away, so then it shows us more exciting things. Or even, it doesn't care if it's exciting or controversial. It'll show us more controversial things. And then we stare at them. What did so-and-so say? What did this politician do? I can't believe that they did this. And then we read that, and it's oh, that people really like that. I'm going to show them even more of that. And then we get locked in. And then we get bought in, and we get sucked in. And it's just sucking our souls into the face of this. And we're addicted. And we could tell we're addicted because we always, if you're like me, look, I am too. I'm not here to judge anybody else more harshly than myself. you're sitting there and you have these things that you do or these habits, like, I'm just going to check this, right? And you just flip it up and look. When you're uncomfortable, when you have just a minute. We just open it up and we start to surf. Whatever your app of choice is, I don't know. Whatever your app of choice is, and we just look at it and we zone out. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I do this. These little dopamine hits. I come home from a long day of work, right? And I have the 4 people in the world who I absolutely love most of all, who the whole life struggle is for them. And I come home to these beautiful angels, and I say, I just need a moment to zone out to people I've never met or will never meet. Why do I do that? Does it relax me? Does it actually relax me? Absolutely not. It doesn't. I don't think I've once ever searched any social media and felt like, whew, my soul feels rested. But it numbs it, and it clouds how my soul is really doing. I don't get to pay attention to how in deficit I am. It clouds it. It muddies the water. And it just rots us out. And this is for us adults. You could come in here, whatever age. I think we have a slide that talks about the average attention span in 2000 for the adult was 12 seconds. In 2013, it was 8 seconds. That's how long you average pay attention to something. Some of you, even in my message right here, have zoned out. And I'm an amazing speaker. I can't always pronounce stuff correctly. We have a hard time paying attention. And some of us tune out long-winded preachers after even only 15 seconds. That wasn't even my intro. We see this, and it affects all ages. You could be an elderly person, a young person, all of us. It affects all of us. And the people, honestly, who I worry about most are the minds in our church, in our society that are still evolving. The young minds. I don't know about you guys, but I have a 13-year-old nephew, and the things he watches move so fast. The cuts and the screens are just, my tiny little mind just explodes a little bit. It fires off like that. And for these minds, you have Instagram for young girls, and the models they put on there aren't even real. It was one thing, this is not a new phenomenon. Always, typically women have been mischaracterized in magazines for the dawn of time. But it's one thing to see it at the grocery store once. It's another thing to have 3 hours a day staring at it. And we wonder why self-image and anxiety and suicide, depression are so high in our young people. Of course. Do you know the average age today a young boy sees porn is 12, 13? That's the average. Of course. They have these little things with them all the time. And for us, it's going to cloud and muddy our society. And our spiritual lives end up being so drained and so empty. And we just try to patch it together with this junk food. We don't want to actually pay attention to our feelings that we have and what the Spirit is saying. We'll just take that 10 minutes and just try to cover it up. Right? When we have a break. And this is why I think that 200 years ago, this is the biggest change in all of the spiritual disciplines. 200 years ago, if you had a family, you might work out in a busy city. You might be busy 8, 10, 12 hours a day doing very stressful, busy things. But you come home and you eat dinner and you have your family. And the sunset and you're by candlelight and you're alone with them. And you have to interact. And you have silence. And you have these moments. No radios, no phones, no TVs, no no reason why some news agency gave you to be upset at the world that day. They had time to think. They had time to be, to exist, to contemplate their place in the world, to what kind of legacy they're leaving for their children and for their grandchildren. To think, was I a better person today than I was yesterday? What areas can I improve? To just sit and be, we are now robbed of that. When I was getting my master's in Christian philosophy, I read a lot of ancient philosophers. Not ancient, old philosophers, but some of you may know René Descartes. René Descartes was this philosopher. He was the guy who created the phrase, I think, therefore I am. Right? Cognito ergo sum in Latin. Are you impressed? So anyway, you should be. That's the only Latin phrase I know. But in his journal of how he came up with that, it starts this way. He was a French guy, and he was alone in a cabin in the winter in France. And he had a fire and a cigar, and he wanted to contemplate the existence of life. So he sat for several days contemplating the existence of life. And he came to that sentence where I think, therefore I am. And then from that sentence, he built a theology out of that. And as I read his many 100-page book about this, the most crazy thing about it was you had a winter where you could just think. And this amazing philosopher started with his ability to be in solitude and his ability to contemplate his place in the world. And me, 10 minutes feels like I'm going to spontaneously combust. See, we have to, because the Lord, he's not going to roar. He whispers. His voice is a whisper. And if we want to hear his voice, if you're dying and if it's been way too long to hear the voice of the Lord, it's in a whisper. In 1 Kings 19, if you want to flip there, in 1 Kings 19, Elijah, this great prophet, Elijah just had all these miracles happen, and Gilbert talked about this a couple months ago. Had all these miracles happen, and Jezebel, is chasing him, and he goes away, and he's fed by ravens, and he's spiritually empty, and he's in despair, and he goes to be in solitude. In 1 Kings, the Lord comes to him and says this. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And Elijah stood there. Elijah stood there. The Lord passed by, and a mighty wind storm hit the mountain. It was such terrible blast that rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, "What are you doing here?" And after that, the voice of the Lord begins to restore and put Elijah back together. And I love that because the storm came, this loud, powerful thing that would get anybody's attention, but the Lord was not there. Then the earthquake came and shook the ground, but the Lord was not there. And then a fire came. The Lord was not there. And then there was a whisper. And the Lord was in the whisper. And our lives are so noisy, so convoluted, so busy. Can you hear the whisper in your life? Do you take time to hear the whisper? Do you set aside moments of silence and solitude to let the Lord put you back together again? Are you so spiritually empty, spiritually hungry, that you're trying to shove it with spiritual junk food of just dopamine hits trying to not think about your own mortality in a phone. My challenge this week, 3 days, 10 minutes. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Sit with your cup of coffee. It's okay. Cup of tea. Sit on your couch while the house is silent. Let the world pass you by for 10 minutes and hear the whisper of the Lord. And here's something I promise you. You're not going to hear it day one. Day one, it'll feel like hours. And you'll understand why it's called the discipline. Day two will be a struggle. Day three will be easier. And all of a sudden, as you do it, you'll start to hunger for it. And your soul will start to be repaired. And your calmness will return. And the Holy Spirit will speak to you. And you'll be able to recognize His voice. You'll be able to understand when He's talking. And you'll grow. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. But you'll go through the rest of the day and calmness will follow you. The presence will stick with you. And you'll be calm. And you'll have that peace that Paul talks about that surpasses understanding. That will be in you. Things that happen to you, they're not going to affect you as much. So that's my goal for you guys. Three days this week, 10 minutes. You can do it. You spend 3 hours a day on your phone. I'm just asking for less than 1/10 of that. Let's pray. God, we thank you. We thank you for everything you do for us, God. And we pray as we learn about these spiritual disciplines, as we grow and as we struggle, God, will you speak to us in the silence? This week, as we struggle for 10 minutes, as we try to silence the noise of hell to hear the silence of heaven, I pray that you help us by making it as easy as it can be for us, because we are so noisy. God, help us shut out our own thoughts, the thoughts of the evil one, the noise of the world, to hear you. And Jesus, it's in your powerful name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. It's just amazing how God works. This last week, I had the privilege of going with our students to camp. And also the first 3 weeks of the summer, I got to work at the same camp and just preach the gospel to students and just take care of students. And we talked about in His image, how we are made in the image of God and how we sin and we fall short of Him. But at the end of the day, it does not matter. And we should be image bearers in Christ. So as we sing this last song, Lead Me to the Cross, I just hope that you guys really just cry out to the Lord of that, why you are here, and that you want to be an image bearer of Christ. So the enemy wants us to be silent, but let's not do that today and cry out in the name of Jesus. So will you please stand with me? Savior, I come, quiet my soul. Remember, redemption's hill, where your blood was spilled for my ransom. Everything I once held dear, I count The Word became flesh, bore my sin and death. Now you're risen. Everything I once held dear, I count it all as lost.
Lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down.
Sing it out. Rid me of myself, I belong to you.
Lead me, oh, lead me to the cross. To your heart, to your heart, lead me to your heart, lead me to
your heart. Sing it out.
lead me to your heart, 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 lead me to the cross where your love poured out. Bring me to my knees, Lord, I lay me down. Rid me of myself, I belong to you. Oh, lead me, oh, lead me to the
Thank you, God, for just allowing us to hear your word, Lord. I just pray as we go into the rest of our week, Lord, that you just have a hand over us, Lord. Allow us to lead ourselves to you, Lord. Just take that quiet time, Lord, and just focus ourselves on you, Lord, in that time. Thank you, Lord, for this day. In your name, amen. You are dismissed. Have a great week, guys.